I did not come to my sister's graduation seeking attention or recognition. I came because she was my sister, and because despite everything, I still believed that showing up mattered. I wore a simple dress, clean, pressed, modest. I braided my hair the way our mother used to braid it for school when we were younger. I carried a bouquet of white lilies, chosen carefully because she once said they looked elegant and made her feel important. The campus was alive with celebration. Laughter spilled across the courtyard, families posing for photographs, proud parents wiping tears from their eyes. I stood among them quietly, holding the flowers against my chest, rehearsing what I would say when I saw her. Congratulations. I'm proud of you. You did it. Simple words, honest words. At the entrance, a uniformed guard stopped me with a raised hand. His voice was firm but polite. Name on the list, please. I told him my name, confident it would be there. Why wouldn't it be? I was her sister. I had helped her through sleepless nights, paid her rent when scholarships fell short, wired money when she was just a little short this month. The guard scanned the clipboard once, then again, slower this time. His eyebrows drew together. I'm sorry, ma'am. Your name isn't here. I smiled, embarrassed more than offended. Could you check again? I might be listed under family. He did. It changed nothing. People behind me began to shift impatiently. I felt heat creep up my neck, that familiar sensation of being in the way. I was about to step aside when I heard my sister's voice, sharp, loud, unmistakable. What's taking so long? She was standing a few meters away in her graduation gown, glowing with confidence, her friends gathered around her like satellites. She looked at me, really looked, and her expression hardened, not with surprise, but irritation. Why are you here? She asked. Before I could answer, the guard gestured toward her. Is she with you? There was a pause. A small one. A choice. My sister laughed, loud enough for others to hear. This is no place for losers, she said, waving her hand dismissively. She shouldn't be here. The words hit me harder than I expected, not because they were cruel, but because they were said so easily. Like a truth she had been waiting to speak. Behind her, our parents laughed. Not nervously. Not awkwardly. They laughed as if this were a joke, as if I were an inconvenience finally being put in my place. My mother turned her head away, still smiling. My father didn't look at me at all. I stood there, frozen for a moment, the noise of celebration suddenly distant. I could have argued. I could have reminded them of everything I had done, everything I had sacrificed. I could have cried. But I didn't. I nodded politely to the guard. It's fine, I said softly. There's been a mistake. I stepped back from the gate. No one followed me. No one called my name. As I walked away, the flowers felt heavier in my hands. I didn't throw them away. I didn't crush them. I carried them all the way home, each step measured, each breath controlled. I refused to give them the satisfaction of seeing me break. That night, I placed the lilies in a vase on my kitchen table. I sat across from them in silence, finally understanding something I had avoided my entire life. Some doors are not closed because you don't belong. They are closed because the people inside never wanted you to stand beside them. And that realization hurt more than being turned away at the gate. I had always been the quiet one. Not because I had nothing to say, but because no one ever waited long enough to hear it. In our family, silence was mistaken for strength, and I wore that misunderstanding like a badge pinned to my chest. From a young age, I learned that being mature meant needing less, asking for nothing, and fixing what others broke without complaint. My sister was different. She was bright, loud, and confident, the kind of child adults admired instantly. When she cried, the world stopped. When I cried, I was told to be strong. You're the older one, they said. You understand. And so I did. Or at least, I pretended to. As we grew older, the roles only sharpened. Her mistakes were called phases. Mine were called disappointments. When she chose poorly, hands rushed to lift her up. When I struggled, I was expected to climb out alone. Somehow, that became normal. Somehow, I accepted it. I worked hard, studied harder, and learned to rely on myself because no one else ever truly did. I built a life piece by piece, quietly, carefully. I didn't announce my achievements. I didn't demand applause. I believed that love was something you proved through consistency, not words. That belief followed me into adulthood. When my sister went to university and money became tight, I helped. When rent was due and her part-time job wasn't enough, I sent what I could. When she called late at night, panicked about bills or books or just needing a little help this month, I didn't hesitate. I never kept count. Love, I thought, shouldn't be transactional. I never reminded her that the apartment she lived in stayed warm because I made sure it did. I never told our parents that while they praised her independence, it was my bank account quietly supporting it. I told myself that one day, she would see me, not as a background figure, but as a sister who stood beside her when it mattered. The graduation shattered that illusion. Sitting alone in my apartment after that day, the silence felt different. It wasn't peaceful. It was heavy, crowded with thoughts I had buried for years. I replayed the laughter, the words, the way they looked through me as if I were invisible. And for the first time, a question formed, not angry, not dramatic, just honest. If I stopped giving, who would I be to them? The answer scared me. I looked around my small living room, the furniture I paid for, the life I maintained without help. I realized I had spent years proving my worth to people who only noticed me when I was useful. I had confused responsibility with love, endurance with loyalty. That night, I opened my phone and stared at my sister's name for a long time. My hands didn't shake. My heart didn't race. I felt strangely calm, as if a decision had already been made somewhere deep inside me. I typed the message slowly, carefully, with respect I had never been shown. I won't be able to continue paying your rent anymore. I wish you well. No accusations. No explanations. No reminders of the past. I pressed send and placed the phone face down on the table. For the first time in my life, I chose silence not as weakness, but as a boundary. The first day after I sent the message was quiet. Too quiet. I went to work, answered emails, cooked dinner, and washed the dishes as if nothing had changed. Yet beneath every ordinary moment, something unfamiliar stirred, an awareness that a line had been crossed, not loudly, but permanently. On the second day, my phone began to vibrate. One missed call. Then another. Messages followed, each one slightly more urgent than the last. At first, my sister's tone was confused, almost casual. What do you mean you can't? Then it shifted to irritation. This isn't funny. By the end of the day, the words were shorter, sharper, and finally, afraid. I didn't respond. Not out of cruelty, but because I had nothing left to explain. I had spent years explaining myself into exhaustion. Our parents called next. Their voices, once dismissive, were suddenly warm with concern. They asked if something was wrong, if I was feeling okay. I recognized the change immediately. It wasn't worry for me, it was discomfort at the disruption I had caused. I let the calls go unanswered. Silence, I had learned, speaks clearly to those who never listened before. 3 days after the message, there was a knock on my door. I knew who it was before I opened it. My sister stood in the hallway, her eyes red, her confidence stripped away like a costume she no longer knew how to wear. She wasn't dressed for admiration now. She was dressed for survival. The sight of her didn't bring me satisfaction. It brought me clarity. She didn't speak at first. She stepped inside when I moved aside, her shoulders shaking. Tears fell freely, messy, uncontrolled. I handed her a glass of water and waited. I didn't rush to comfort her. I didn't tell her it would be okay. I had done that for years. I don't know what to do, she whispered finally. I'm going to be evicted. There it was. Not an apology. Not reflection. Just the consequence. She talked quickly after that, about deadlines, about how unfair everything was, about how she didn't mean what she said at the graduation. She said she was stressed. She said everyone was laughing. She said she needed me. I listened without interrupting. I noticed how her words curved around responsibility, never landing on it. And for the first time I allowed myself to see her clearly, not as the golden child or the cruel sister, but as someone who had been protected from reality at my expense. When she finished, she looked at me with expectation. With certainty. As if I would do what I always did. I took a breath. My voice was steady when I spoke. I love you, I said. But I won't do this anymore. Her face crumpled. You're punishing me, she cried. No, I replied gently. I'm stopping. I told her that what she said that day mattered. That laughter can wound as deeply as words. That I had spent too long earning a place in a family that only valued me when I paid for it. She begged. She promised things would be different. But promises without respect sound hollow, and I had learned to hear the emptiness in them. When she left, she wasn't angry. She was smaller. Quieter. And I knew then that the power had never been in the money, it had been in my willingness to give it without being seen. As the door closed behind her, I felt no triumph. Only relief. The shift hadn't been loud or dramatic. It had happened the moment I stopped saving someone who never learned to stand. After that day, life began to settle into a strange, unfamiliar peace. It wasn't a peace born of victory or schadenfreude. It wasn't the rush of revenge or the satisfaction of seeing someone finally realize their mistakes. It was quieter than that, more profound, a peace that comes from reclaiming yourself after years of bending to fit the expectations of others. I was no longer invisible, no longer expendable. I had finally learned that dignity could not be rented, borrowed, or earned through sacrifice alone. It could only be claimed. My parents tried to reach me, hesitant now, testing boundaries they had ignored for years. They called, emailed, and even texted sweetly, asking how I was, pretending that the last harsh words, the laughter, the humiliation, never happened. I answered politely, sparingly, and on my own terms. I didn't need their approval. I didn't need their validation. I had something far more valuable now, a clear understanding of my worth. I thought about my sister, too. I watched from a distance as she struggled to balance rent, bills, and daily life on her own. I felt no pleasure in her hardship, only a calm recognition that life had finally asked her to grow where I had spent years helping her remain small. When she came to me later, sheepish and desperate, I gave her what she needed in the moment, water, a listening ear, guidance, but I did not carry her burden. I did not pay the rent. I did not solve her problems. For the first time, she faced consequences, and I watched her stand, or stumble, on her own. It was a strange gift, both for her and for me. In the quiet moments of my own life, I finally allowed myself to dream. I signed the lease on a small apartment in a neighborhood I loved, one I could afford without anyone's help. I traveled to places I had always longed to see, places my sister never cared about, places I never felt I had permission to explore. I spent weekends with books and music, with friends who truly valued me, who saw me as a person and not a wallet or a caretaker. I was building a life not defined by family obligation or the need to be tolerated, but by choice, by desire, by self-respect. And slowly, without drama, without a grand gesture, I changed. The laughter of others no longer hurt. The dismissive comments, the casual cruelty, even the echoes of my sister's insult, the words loser and unworthy that had once cut deep, lost their power. They were simply noise. I had learned that the sweetest revenge is not in the suffering of another, but in the quiet, unshakable integrity of standing for yourself. I realized then that I had been misunderstood my entire life, not because I was weak, but because I had been quietly strong in a world that valued loudness over substance. I had been the invisible backbone, the woman who solved problems without acknowledgement. Now, I was visible. Now, I stood whole. I learned that boundaries are love, not punishment. That saying no can be a form of protection rather than cruelty. That dignity is not something to be begged for, it is something to be claimed, defended, and never sold again. I was never the loser my sister mocked at that graduation. I was the woman who walked away from years of being taken for granted, the woman who built a life that demanded respect, and the woman who finally, quietly, allowed herself to breathe. And in that silence, I discovered the most profound truth: the only person who ever needed to see me was me. I had finally arrived. Whole. Unshakable. Free.